Honor, the state will call Officer Alyssa Greenhalgh.
All right, now that the witness is sworn, let me just briefly inquire, because we have these simulcast locations and the audio's been released each day in this case. Have you listened to or reviewed in any way any of the trial testimony that's taken place thus far in this case?
I have not.
Okay, thank you for that response. When testifying, please make verbal responses to the questions and avoid talking at the same time as any attorney questioning you so we can keep a clear record. With that in mind, Ms. Blake, you can inquire on direct.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you please state your name and spell it for the record?
Alyssa Greenhalgh, Alyssa, and the last name is Greenhalgh.
Where are you currently employed?
The Rexburg Police Department.
How long have you been employed with them?
A little over 2 years.
What is your current title or position?
Patrol officer.
Prior to working with Rexburg, did you hold another position as a law enforcement officer?
I did.
And where was that?
That was at the Fremont County Sheriff's Office.
Do you have any specialized training in order to be a peace officer?
I do. I've been through the Post Academy, and I hold an intermediate patrol certificate.
Were you working in Fremont County for the Sheriff's Office on October 19th of 2019?
Yes.
Do you recall what shift you were working?
I believe I was a day shift officer.
How long had you been a police officer at that time?
Approximately 2 years.
Do you recall responding to the report of an unattended death?
Yes.
Where did you respond?
I responded to 202 North 1900 East in Salem.
Is that in Fremont County, Idaho?
It is.
Did you learn who the decedent was?
Yes.
Who was that?
Tammy Daybell.
Had you heard her name before?
I had not.
When you arrived on scene, who was present?
Chad Daybell and Garth Daybell were both present.
Did you make any observations when you first arrived?
Yes.
What were those?
Chad and Garth both met me in the living room. Chad seemed very distraught and was crying. Garth was a little bit more reserved and stayed pretty quiet.
When you respond, and I guess to back up, what is an unattended death?
An unattended death is basically somebody contacts police when they find either a stranger or usually their loved one or family member that they know is deceased.
And is it generally if someone is not under a physician's care?
That's correct.
Had you responded to other death scenes before?
Yes.
Do you recall approximately how many?
Approximately 5 to 10.
When you are dispatched out to an unattended death, are you conducting an investigation?
Yes.
Are you looking for specific things as a law enforcement officer?
Yes.
What are some of the things that you're looking for?
As a first responder officer, we're looking for obvious signs of foul play, like disturbances at the scene, broken furniture, things pushed around, or obvious injuries on the body, like gunshot wounds, stab wounds, things like that.
When you first responded into the residence, did you notice any signs of a disturbance?
I did not.
Did you notice any signs of a break-in?
No.
At some point, did you observe the body of Tammy Daybell?
Yes.
Who told you where she was located?
Chad did.
Did he lead you to the location of the body?
Yes, he did.
And where was her body located?
Her body was in their bedroom on the bed.
Were you advised whether or not her body had been moved prior to your arrival?
Yes, I was told that it had been moved.
And who told you that?
Chad.
When you respond out, do you obtain or request information from the individuals on scene?
I do.
Did you do that in this case?
Yes, I did.
What did Chad tell you regarding the death of his wife?
He had told me she had woken up at approximately midnight with a coughing fit. She had vomited in the bedroom and then had gone into the bathroom down the hallway and had continued vomiting in the bathroom. He went into the bathroom to help her clean up and then had put her back to bed. They had both gone back to sleep. And then he said at about 5:40 a.m. he had felt the covers of the bed pull off of him and had looked over and noticed that Tammy had fallen off the bed. And he had told her to wake up, and when she didn't respond, he got up and turned the light on and saw that she had partially fallen off the bed and wasn't responsive.
And when you say partially fallen off the bed, did he give a description of how she was partially off the bed, which part of her body?
Yes, he described that her feet and legs had gotten caught in the sheets, so her feet were still up on the mattress, but her torso had fallen off the bed and her head was touching the floor.
And then he indicated that he and his son had moved the body back onto the bed?
That's correct.
Had they also covered the body up with blankets?
Yes.
And when you arrived on scene, is that the position you found her body in?
Yes.
When you arrived, was it apparent that Tammy was in fact deceased?
Yes.
Do you also request information from family members regarding a decedent's health?
I do.
Did you do that in this case?
Yes.
And did you request that information from Chad?
Yes.
What did he tell you?
He told me that Tammy didn't like to see the doctor. She had had kind of a cold. She had fallen in the driveway approximately a month prior and had received care for that. But other than that, she didn't have any major medical issues or injuries that he had told me about.
Do you recall if Chad said anything to you about Tammy having shaking fits?
No.
Did he indicate anything to you about Tammy going through menopause?
I believe so, yes.
And do you recall if he told you that affected how she slept?
Not that I recall.
Do you recall if he said anything to you about Tammy having fainting spells?
No, he did not.
Do you recall if he said anything about her blood pressure?
I believe he did tell me that she had issues with her blood pressure.
At some point while you were there, did anyone else respond to the scene?
Yes.
Who was that?
The deputy coroner and the coroner both responded.
And at some point, was a mortician called as well?
Yes.
As part of your job duties, do you make a determination whether or not to have an autopsy performed?
No.
As part of your investigation that day, did you reach out to some detectives?
I did.
Did you indicate to those detectives what you had noticed on scene?
Yes, I did.
At that time, had you made any observations of any suspicious activity?
No.
And were you basing part of your investigation in part on what Chad Daybell was relaying to you?
Yes.
Did Garth Daybell ever contradict his father while you were there?
No, he did not.
Did Garth Daybell offer any information to you?
No.
Did you end up taking photographs of the scene?
Yes, I did.
Your Honor, I'm going to ask that the witness be shown States Exhibit 295A through L. These photos have previously been provided to defense counsel, and I have the official copy for the court as well. The original, and then if the witness can be shown this. And I believe Your Honor has been provided with a courtesy copy as well.
I have, thank you.
And Officer Greenhalgh, if you will look through those photos. Do those appear to be an accurate depiction of what you saw that day?
Yes,
And did you in fact take those photos?
I did.
I would move for the admission of States Exhibit 295A through L.
Any objection?
Your Honor, due to the graphic nature of the photos, they may be more prejudicial than probative, so I'd lodge that objection.
All right, do you want to make a response to that, Ms. Blake?
Your Honor, I would indicate that these are, the deputy or the officers indicated these are an accurate depiction of what she observed that day, and I think pursuant to case law, they are allowed to be shown.
All right, the court's considered the objection and also looking at whether under Rule 403 they should be excluded as being unnecessarily prejudicial. I do not find that they would be because they accurately depict the scene that the officer observed, and for that reason the objection's overruled, so exhibits 295A through L are admitted.
And Your Honor, I would ask for permission to publish those to the jury.
You can publish them, Ms. Blake.
And Your Honor, similar to the graphic photos of the children, the court took special precautions not to show those to the public. I don't know if the court wants to consider that as well.
Mr. Archibald, I did consider that. I was able to see these photos in advance just over the break and determine that I'll allow them to be displayed on the projector, even though they are graphic in nature.
Trying to make sure everyone else has the correct view. Officer Greenhalgh, what are we seeing in this photo?
This is a photo of taken from the entry of the bedroom of Tammy's body on the bed.
And that is in fact Tammy on the bed?
Yes.
And that is how you first located her?
Yes.
And in this next photo, what are we seeing there on the floor?
So there is a mat on the floor with a towel and then some clothing items from the closet.
At any point did you observe anyone do anything with that towel?
Not that I recall.
And what is this photo depicting?
This is another photo of Tammy's body on the bed.
While you were present, did you get closer to observe Tammy's body?
I did.
And when you did you make specific observations?
Yes.
What were some of those observations?
She had some pink reddish foam on her mouth that was running down her cheek.
And is that what we're seeing in this photo here?
It is.
In the prior deaths you'd responded to, had you ever seen pink foam on someone's mouth?
No.
Do you know if you'd ever responded to a death where the cause was determined to be asphyxiation?
Not to my knowledge.
And is that similar to what we're seeing in this photo as well?
Yes.
Was this just a zoomed in picture of that?
Yes.
While you were on scene before anyone else arrived, did you do anything to manipulate or move Tammy's body?
The only thing I did was check a pulse on her arm, but I didn't move her body in any way.
After others had arrived on scene, was Tammy's body moved?
Yes.
Is that done to assist with an assessment?
Yes.
Were you present while that was being done?
I was.
And is this a start of moving Tammy's body?
Yes.
Did you make any additional observations as you started this process?
I did.
And what were those?
As we moved the blanket down so that more of her body was visible, I did notice lividity on her back and legs.
And in this photo, are we again seeing that pink foam?
Yes.
I'm going to show State's Exhibit 295J. In this photo, is this, again, a closer view of that pink foam?
Yes.
And at that time, was that one of the main observations that you had made with regard to Tammy's body?
It was.
Did you observe any bruising on Tammy's body?
Yes, she did have a small bruise on her arm.
And just by looking at that, were you able to determine how old or when that bruise would have been inflicted?
No, I was not.
Did you end up accompanying Tammy's body to the mortuary?
Yes,
Did you also take a photograph there?
I did.
And I'm going to show State's Exhibit 295L. Is that an accurate depiction of the photo you took?
Yes.
And in this photo, had the foam or the pink substance been removed from her face?
Yes, it had.
I have no further questions at this time, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, Ms. Blake. Any cross-examination?
So, officer, what time were you summoned to the scene?
Approximately 6 a.m.
And the report that Chad Daybell gave you was that at 5:40 a.m. is when he felt the covers pull off and she fell off the bed.
That's correct.
Okay. And so, do you know what time the 911 call was?
I don't.
But the time that you were notified to go there was about 6 a.m.?
Correct.
And so in talking to Chad about, did you ask him why the 20-minute difference between falling off the bed and the officer arriving, or when he called 911?
I didn't specifically ask him about that.
And so you arrived at about 6 a.m.?
Yes.
And it was apparent to you that she was already deceased?
Yes.
And that the Chad and Garth indicated they had picked the body up off the ground and put it back on the bed?
Yes.
Now, I don't know if this is part of your training and experience, but bodies don't move if they're already deceased, right?
Correct.
So for her to fall off the bed, she would have been alive at that point, right?
I assume so.
Okay. So sometime between 5:40 a.m. and 6 a.m. is that when you believe that she passed away?
I don't know that I'm qualified to make that determination.
Okay. But just by the time you got there, there was no point in calling for an ambulance?
Correct.
By the time you got there, there was no life-saving measure that could have been had?
Correct.
Do you know if CPR had been performed on Tammy between 5:40 a.m. and 6 a.m.?
To my knowledge, it was not performed.
All right. Thank you, officer.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Officer Greenhalgh, you were asked about a time of death for Tammy. Is that part of what you do with your job duties?
No.
Are you qualified to determine the time of death?
No.
Have you taken any medical training in order to be able to do that?
No.
You were asked about a dead person falling off the bed, and Chad saying that happened at about 5:40 a.m. Is that correct? Did Tammy, based on what observations you were able to make, did it appear Tammy had only been dead for 20 or 30 minutes when you arrived?
No, it appeared she had been dead much longer.
And why did it appear that way?
And I'll object if this witness isn't qualified to make time of death, and we're just guessing.
I will sustain that. I think it's speculative.
Based on your observations, was Tammy's body cold to the touch?
Yes.
Did you notice signs of lividity?
Yes.
Were you able to determine, or could you tell if there were signs of rigor mortis setting in?
I could not determine that.
One moment, Your Honor. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Blake. Ms. Greenhalgh, that'll conclude your testimony then.